Hello, this is Jer. I'm playing Oxygen Not Included, and this is my Moonlet playthrough. So in the last episode, I brought iron ore back to this world and produced steel. And I'm currently working on bringing oil to this world so I can produce plastic. And one of the main things that I want to work on once I've got plastic is to be able to build steam turbines and control temperature. In particular, I want to handle the heat that is coming from the metal refinery. I also want to handle the heat that's going to be coming from the poly press once I've got oil. And I also want a place to store food. Now, I temporarily have an alright place at the bottom of this base that is around minus 20 degrees, but it's not cold enough and it's not going to last forever. So I want to make essentially a deep freeze. So several different projects, kind of all can be done together with a set of one or two steam turbines. I'm going to build two. And I want to put that whole area in a vacuum. So that's why I'm bringing oxygen down here with exosuits, because I want my dupes to be able to go in here and they're going to dunk themselves down to this water and come back out on the right side where a vacuum will be formed. That's why I built two tiles there to make sure those are also vacuum. Okay, so the dupe has returned from to the Desolate Lands. They were out visiting the homeworld. They are bringing back water, ceramic, glass, and steel. So first thing I'm going to do is use steel to make an oil well, because I want to start producing some oil in this world. I've got a little bit of oil here, but I want to fill up at least two things of liquid reservoirs of oil and bring it back to the home world. So I've got to power those in. I'm just going to knock this out so I'll get the oil that's cached there into the pump as well, and bring it into the rocket later. All right, so just having the Atmos suits loaded, I'm going to put that as a high priority so my dupes do it right away. And on the Desolate Lands now, I'm installing solar panels and doing them two tiles down. That way I don't have to worry about ladders. My dupes can just create the first one and then go up from there. I just need an initial ladder to get up to this point. And this is going to allow me to get more power, because as I turn the oil well on and other things, I'm going to start to consume more power than just a few solar panels can handle. Noticing the polluted water to oxygen system isn't giving me the oxygen I need for the Atmos suit, so destroying these, I'm going to make that become polluted bottles, and that'll emit even more polluted oxygen in this area. And then I'll put up two more liquid reservoirs for the future. Next, I'll get these two dupes to dig out this area because I'm looking for more copper ore. So the two dupes here are going to be busy for a while. Now that those two tiles have been created, I can destroy them. That is going to make them a vacuum. And as I dig out to the right, everything in that area will become a vacuum. So there we are. I've dug out here and continue on. I'm blocking off the water on the top. So even though that really tall column is ultimately going to be a vacuum, it's not right now. And I want to make sure I maintain the vacuum on the left side. And I won't connect those two things until that really tall column on the right becomes a full vacuum. Now that those tiles have been built, I can now connect this area together. Alright, so what I'm doing now is combining these two different oxygen lines to go to the Atmos suits, because those Atmos suits are taking a long time to fill up, and I'm not producing enough oxygen in the polluted water oxygen system. So I'm combining the line that the pump that is next to the electrolyzer and doing the filtering for oxygen, and I'm combining that with these two lines. And I'm doing it in such a way that I'm going to still deliver the oxygen at the bottom of the base in a vent, but have a separate line to go specifically down to the Atmos suits. So the Atmos suits will get oxygen from both systems and hopefully have a complete line of oxygen to be filled up quickly. A little bit of a risky dig here. I've found some bleach stone, so I'm making a save. And the bleach stone is going to drop in water, so I expect it'll be fine. But just in case chlorine goes everywhere, I'm going to I'm going to handle that. So the dupe took it out, no problem. Now I just want to get rid of the chlorine liquid, because that could turn to gas if it warms up. I can destroy it by filling in the tile here where it exists and digging around it and getting my dupes to build at a diagonal way such that I get rid of that. So no more risk to chlorine going into this area. So I was considering giving some smooth hatches some iron ore to slowly convert to iron, because they don't release a lot of heat in the process, or really any, but compared to the metal refinery. But I don't have any more smooth hatches, so I guess that plan is out. I could, I could get some more. I could feed them to stone hatches and get them to lay eggs as smooth hatches. But I'm going to check if I have down the hatch. I do. I already have the down hatch achievement, which requires me to get those smooth hatches to produce 10 tons of refined metal. So I won't bother. I'll either get it from the iron from the Desolans, or I will just produce more, taking on more heat in the next under the metal refinery. So I found a line of 10 tiles of bissolite. That is where the steam turbines are going to sit, and various different equipment underneath it, such as an aqua tuner, will be installed underneath, and the polypress to be able to control heat in this area, so that I can operate a metal refinery, the polypress, and have a deep freeze system for food storage. I'm worried at some point this water is going to drop that separates my vacuum from the rest of the base on the left. So I'm going to build 2 tiles right here just to reduce the chances of that from happening. And also bringing in power, because I know I'll ultimately want this with my steam turbines, aqua tuners, and other equipment in the area. Measuring out 10 tiles of bissolite and making a cut on the right side, just to make sure that I'll get my 2 steam turbines and have lots of space for all my equipment that needs to fit underneath this. For the oil well system, I'm actually going to need 4 pipes that go in and out of this zone. So what I'm doing is I'm digging out the bissolite, and I'm going to replace it with some insulated tiles so that I can protect the heat a little bit from going up, but also allow 4 different pipes to go in. I'm mopping up water that is underneath this bissolite, and that I actually don't mind if it was water, but salt water I'd rather not have. So I want to remove all the salt water and just have water on that tile, if anything at all. The metal refinery has heated the water up significantly underneath it, so what I'm doing is I'm digging down to a colder place, and I'm going to dig in such a way that the water will fall down into there, cool off, and I'll be able to pump water from that spot to allow me to operate the metal refinery a little longer before this area also gets too hot. One of the pipes that goes to the oil well area is going to be the oil, of course, that goes out of this system and is going to go inside the rocket to be transported back to my homeworld. Putting the finishing touches on this area here that's going to store water in a colder place so I can continue to operate the metal refinery. Also don't want to bring heavy watt wire further down, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to build a transformer with a smart battery and of course automated wire to turn off when it's not needed, and build a regular wire and have that sent down to the pump, just to save a little bit of metal ore for this particular project. And then I'll have that pump water into the metal refinery, and then that's going to dump it back down next to that cold area, and eventually warm it up as the metal refinery operates for a bit. So there are 3 more lines that I need to get down to the oil well, one of which is water that goes into the oil well as an input. So I'm going to connect that to my water source. And the other is, so I'm going to put in actually an automation to turn this machine off, the oil well that is, when things get too hot. Let's say about 80 or 90 degrees. The other thing is, speaking of too hot, oil well is going to produce a significant amount of heat, so I'm going to have another line, a line going in and out, that's going to act as a cooling process. And I'll deal with the cooling of liquid that's in that at a later point, but I'll just make sure that I've got the piping with the radiant pipe at the bottom next to the oil well. and that will keep this area cool. At the bottom of this base, I'm actually still burning algae, although my dupes aren't going in that area. So in the livable area with the barracks and that, I'm going to drop a gas vent. I'm also going to bring it down here where I'm currently burning algae and remove this whole system of power and algae down there. And that way the entire base will be producing oxygen from the water to oxygen system, and I won't be consuming any algae at all. So I'm building doorways here so that I can ultimately get down to these beta hives, which I won't need anytime soon, but I'll just start the process of getting access to those things for enriched uranium, because they can produce enriched uranium, far more effectively than any of the technology that I can build. Alright, I've got about 7,000 kilograms of steel, so I can construct my first pieces of equipment that's going to go underneath here. So I've got a poly press that's going to produce plastic, and I've got to get a system, a conveyor loader, to get that plastic out, because dupes aren't going to be going in this extremely hot area once it'll eventually be sealed off. So the only way to get the plastic out is with that conveyor loader. Also bringing in some wiring that's going to require electrical engineer to build. Now this isn't essential, but the idea is if I'm going to close off an area, I want to give it the highest quality wiring I can so that I don't have to go in and refactor. Whereas the rest of the base that has heavy watt wires, it's easy to replace those later on. It won't be easy to replace that in this area. Not that I'm going to be needing to upgrade it anytime soon, but it's just one of those things. If I don't do it now, it's just going to be a real headache to do it later. So the last bit of this is going to be a liquid reservoir, and just building the piping for the aqua tuner. In my homeworld, I've got a system to purify polluted water so I can remove food poisoning, but I don't have that in this asteroid. So what I'm going to do is build a crude system. I'm not going to go through all the full automation. So I'm going to build a liquid reservoir that is just naturally sitting in some chlorine. And I'm going to pump the water from the liquid reservoir that's storing the output of the washroom with the polluted water and food poisoning, and just push it there and block it off so that once it's in there, no more can get in once that tank is near full. And just let that tank sit there until the food poisoning is removed. I can then later on build a water sleeve and have that turned to regular water and actually use it in my base from that point on. I now have enough steel to build an aqua tuner, so that's pretty much all the steel bits that I need. The other part is a system of radiant pipes that go all through here, and those tiles that exist are made out of granite just to enhance a little bit of heat transfer. Because what I want to do ultimately is pump in some petroleum in that liquid reservoir and have it go around in a cycle such that it cools off really hot temperatures. And I'm going to have this be the liquid that goes in and out of a new metal refinery and keep that cool, well, not really cold, but certainly going any higher than 100 or 200 degrees using this system. This is something I've forgotten in the past several times. I'm building the conveyor rail out of this system. It's quite annoying when you fill this up with water or steam as it eventually gets too hot. I also need the gas pipe going out of the poly press. Otherwise that won't operate. That's going to produce some hot carbon dioxide. Now that pipe exists over here to deliver some oxygen, I can destroy the battery, the oxygen diffuser, and the manual generator. Okay, let's send the polluted water to this new place, this new liquid reservoir that's sitting in some chlorine to be able to remove the food poisoning in it. Digging out a new area, and this is going to be where the metal refinery is going to exist, as well as some other machinery over time, but it'll start off with the metal refinery. My dupes in the Decimal Lens has finished the construction of the solar panels, but I don't actually have them all connected to heavy watt wires, so I'm doing that now. All the polluted water has been transferred to this liquid reservoir, and the food poisoning has been removed. So what I'm doing is I'm disabling the output of the liquid reservoir on the bottom. So no new polluted water will go in there, because any new polluted water that comes from the washroom will have a tiny bit of food poisoning, and that could disrupt the whole process. So what I'm doing now that I know there's no new polluted water coming is I'm going to divert the water from here that doesn't need to be in the chlorine anymore over to these two new containers, and eventually I'll put it through a water sieve, but I'm in no rush of doing that because I've got tons of water at the moment. I'm telling the oil well not to run if the temperature is 90 degrees or higher. And that's not to protect the oil well or the pump, because those things are made of steel. So I'm not concerned about that. I'm more concerned about really hot oil going to be pumped up through the base and in my rockets. I just want to avoid that situation. So when saying, gets up to 90 degrees, turn off. So here is the new. So what I'm doing, I'm putting a new floor, but I'm going to be very careful of not destroying the vacuum underneath it. And I'm choosing a location for the metal refinery. I'm going to put two tiles, insulated tiles underneath. And the reason for that is I'm going to have insulated piping going through that. And I really just want to prevent the heat transfer, because this is going to be really hot petroleum that is going to go in and out of this thing as it operates. Finally, I'm just putting some automated lights, so that lights will turn on when a dupe is in the area and operating that machine. This is a minor thing, but I'm clicking on these two desks, hitting view entry, and that's producing data banks. And then I'm going to go in the rocket and tell the storage bin there to store some data banks so that they can be used for research back in the home world once this rocket gets there. Just building pipes that are going to go in and out of the base, because ultimately there'll be a cooling system just about where those solar panels are that I'll build in the future. That's going to keep the oil well cool as it operates. I eventually want to refactor my rockets, but the rocket still has water in it. So I want to actually have some excess liquid reservoirs to store. And actually this isn't a bad idea, because now that I'm using water for the oil well, I want to have a bit of higher priority on oxygen production and the washroom, because I can always come back to refill the oil well, but if I'm running out of oxygen, I could have big problems. So my brain is starting to hurt at trying to figure out this puzzle. What I want to do, the two pipes that go out of the liquid reservoir, they go to the metal refinery. The two that come out of the aqua tuner, they're going to go to the right of the metal refinery, and I also need a pipe that inputs petroleum, and I have to cross two pipes over another two pipes. So yeah, I'm gonna have to sort something out here. All right, let me ignore those pipes for now, and I'll build up in this area. This is where I'm going to have a big frozen block, a set of tiles that are frozen, and I'm going to have a conveyor rail go through, and I'm going to bring food through it so that I can essentially freeze food. It's kind of like flash freezing food in a way, but really just getting that temperature down. Now this area here is the area that I want to have the aqua tuner connected to. So this is the rocket, that utility rocket that I'm going to use to bring hot oil back to the home world. But I want to do it in such a way that it doesn't overheat this rocket. So I'm going to refactor this bit. I essentially want to make a vacuum area that has liquid reservoirs filled with this hot stuff. So as I'm transporting back, this rocket itself won't take on the heat. I'm still racking my brain on how to do this nicely. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of space to work on the right. I love to have just one more tile, but thanks to the petroleum that is just pointing out one spot, the maximum pipes I can get up there is two. I'd love it if there was three, because I want two with aqua tuner and one for petroleum. Anyway, I'm going to keep thinking about it. So in the top left of this rocket, I want to build a vacuum with two liquid reservoirs. So I need to build a pump that's going to pump oxygen. So I've got already quite a bit of pipes in there. So I'm going to destroy those and vent out oxygen in a new location, and ultimately put in a pump there and have that send air out, so I can ultimately get a vacuum where these two new liquid reservoirs are going to be. So here is the location of the pump, and I'm just going to pump all the oxygen here to the right, such that I'll get a vacuum on the left side. Did not expect this, but noticed that the water here had gotten to where one of the beta hives are. Unfortunately, that is now lost, and there's nothing I can do about it. But from this point on, I'm going to be very protective of the remaining two. So I think at this point, I might as well locate the pump to the very bottom and bring the wire down, and then this will be the location for water going in and out of the metal refinery. So now I'm worried about water falling and destroying this hive, so I'm going to protect it. I'm going to destroy this door and build it up such that water will, if it does or any other liquid gets in this area, it'll move to the left. And I'll have a ladder for my dupes to be able to access the hive if they want to reach in and grab some enriched uranium that those critters are producing. So this cold set of tiles that I'm building to freeze food is going to be a little bit bigger. So I need to destroy some of this stuff. So I need to get my dupes in the area first of all. Before I seal this area off, I need to have all the pipes in order such that the oil is going to be able to be stored in here, and I'll be able to get it back out once I get to the other side. So one of my dupes has the destruction skills. So they were able to get rid of some of that old world equipment. Now I'm just building up tiles in such a way that I'll be able to keep digging up from the bottom and maintaining the vacuum at the same time. Okay, I'm realizing now I won't be able to actually create a vacuum by venting oxygen because this is overpressured. So what I've done is I destroyed some pipes in there. I'm going to bring this down to the bottom on my rocket and actually push the oxygen outside of the rocket. Now, in my mind, it would be kind of sad to actually have this just vented out in space. So I'm actually going to then deliver this inside my base so that it'll be used by my dupes to be able to breathe rather than just wafting off somewhere in the star map. Also a little bit concerned that this might actually not be able to vent out quick enough, so I'm also going to put in a gas reservoir to store some excess oxygen again so it doesn't get wasted. And just digging up in this area, destroying tiles as I go up, and then this is just going to give me more area to build a large set of tiles for food freezing. Okay, it looks like I measured this wrong. I thought this was 10. It's actually 11, so I need to cut it short. Fortunately, this means that I can actually have 3 pipes on the right side of this now, though I do have to destroy some pipes and tiles to make this change happen. I'm going to move the liquid shutoff inside the vacuum area instead of where it is, so I don't have any hot oil leaking out the side that is not connected to the vacuum area, exposing the rest of the rocket to heat. Here I'm reconnecting the aluminum pipes and reinstalling the conveyor loader. I'm now building a liquid reservoir, and this is going to contain ethanol. This is going to be the system, or the coolant rather, that's going to cool down the food supply such that I can do a deep freezing in all my food. Notice that polluted water has seeped through this area. I'm assuming that was just because one of the tiles took overpressure damage. I don't think there's any action to do. Building 2 liquid bridges, and what this is essentially going to do is control the priority of the liquid, the petroleum that's going to be in there. And how it's going to be set up is it's going to rotate around in an infinite loop going in and out of the liquid reservoir. But if it has the ability to go into the metal refinery, that is going to be the priority, and it'll do that first. And it'll also have the priority on the way out of the metal refinery, because this whole loop is really dedicated to that, just making sure that the metal refinery, the petroleum going in and out has a highest priority. Building the automation wire to control the liquid shutoff and starting to seal off this area. I need ability to turn this back on when I get to the other home base asteroid. Okay, so connecting the piping system from here, this should be a little bit easier. I just need a loop that goes in and out of that liquid reservoir up to the metal refinery area for this. I need a liquid bridge just for the purposes of jumping over one. And here, this is where the ethanol is going to go in and out. So what I'm going to do ultimately is put a temperature gauge out with that, with the liquid shutoff that goes into the aqua tuner. And it's going to measure the temperature of the ethanol, and if it's not cold enough, it's going to tell the ethanol that comes back to cool itself off via the liquid or the aqua tuner, so that I can get that to a really low temperature, maybe even something like minus 40 or 50. Just before I shut off this area of the rocket, I'm going to give this power for the pump and liquid shut off. So this is a right old jigsaw puzzle of trying to figure out where pipes are going to be. I'm going to put the oil refinery here, and where oil from the other planet will find its way down. I'll get the pipe in for that. So that's going to go into that machine, and petroleum is going to go out. But I have to keep in mind that I'm going to have steam turbines underneath that. So I don't want to have pipes go in that area. So instead of going down, because I don't believe I've got enough room, I'm going to go to the right instead. But those two ethanol lines are also in the way. So I'm going to have a liquid bridge that jumps over them. I'm going to make the ethanol jump over the petroleum line and the oil line. So on the right side, that is going up. On the left side is going down for the ethanol line, and I'll just have the other pipes go in. Okay, I'm a little worried that I may not have enough room for the steam turbines underneath, because not only do they have water that's going out, so now I'm actually measuring exactly where they're going to be. That's the two locations where steam turbine is going to be sending water out, but I also need to keep the bottom of it cool. And if I have a pipe that goes down, keeps that cool, it has to have a return line. And it looks like the way I've got things set up, that's not got, so I'll be able to get the coolant going in, but it has no way of getting back out. So I have to move everything up one tile. Most of it is not built yet, so that's not a big deal. So I'm pretty much, I'm going to design the exact same thing. Again, the ethanol is going to jump over the two lines, oil and petroleum line, and it'll be such that I'll just have to go up one extra tile for the petroleum line going out, and I should be able to make this. I don't think I've ever constructed anything that has so many pipes all condensed in one spot, but it hopefully this will all work out. The oil refinery is one of those things that needs to be operated by a dupe, so I'm going to put automated lights for whoever is going to be operating it. It's now time to seal off the top left area that's going to contain the oil. If this critter stays here, they're probably going to burn to death in the hot steam that's going to happen in the future, so I'm wrangling them and just getting them to get out of this area. So I've already built a poly press, but that whole system doesn't have steam turbines above it to keep it cool. And I need plastic in order to build the steam turbines. So I actually need to have a temporary poly press somewhere else. I'm going to build that in a cold zone because it produces a lot of heat. And I need to get enough plastic for at least the two different steam turbines to run. And then I'll stop operating this and switch to the other one when that becomes operational. So this poly press, I've got a temperature gauge to the left of it. I'm going to set it up to turn off if it gets too hot, but I won't be operating it too long, so hopefully that's not going to be the case. And I'm going to make sure that I now have a petroleum line going towards it. I'm going to break the petroleum going in the other direction. So this is going to be a temporary line. So I may need to destroy this pipe, bring it over one. So yeah, as I was mentioning, I'm going to make this out of insulation, out of not ceramic, because I'm not sure that I have enough to make it this whole way made, but I'll use indigenous rock. It's, as I mentioned, it's temporary. It's not going to be running forever. I just need a little bit of plastic to create it to switch over to a different system. All right, over here I noticed that I've got a vacuum. So I can start to store oil in that rocket without worrying too much about heat. So I'm going to now connect the oil line that is pumped up from that steel pump and put that inside my rocket so I can send it back home. In addition to oil, I'm going to get my dupes to load some iron and lead. And because those are hot, in particular the lead, I'm going to have the conveyor loader put them inside the vacuuming area on the bottom right. So this is a rocket that has two vacuums for storing hot stuff, liquid and metals, both on different corners. Here we can see oil start to be loaded into the rocket. The mean temperature of the rocket is about 40 degrees. That's pretty warm. But the oil is 70 plus degrees, so it's still very beneficial to have this vacuum system prevent the rocket from getting any hotter than it currently is. So now I'm building the granite tiles that's going to act as the cooling block to freeze food in my system of my deep freeze system to store infinite amount of food forever. I no longer need the oxygen line going out, so I'm going to get rid of that. I'm going to build a ethanol distillery, and the purpose for this is not power. I don't believe I can actually burn it right now for the super sustainable achievement anyways, but actually this is for the liquid reservoir that's going to do the cooling of the deep freezer system for my food. 2 liquid reservoirs have been filled up with oil, so I'm now ready to send this rocket back to the home world to deliver that oil to start producing some plastic. I was going to send that to ethanol line down, but I think it's going to be a lot easier if I send it up and then send it into the input of this, and then that'll ultimately get to that liquid reservoir. I'm building a liquid reservoir to still store oil before it's processed in the refinery. What I don't want to happen is I'm making that out of steel, by the way, because it could be more than 75 degrees, and putting under a tiling such that I'll get a vacuum underneath it to prevent heat going into the base. But as I was saying, I don't want to hold up the rocket from being solely emptied from the refinery. I want to be able to get the oil out so I can send this rocket back. The other thing I'm doing is this is important, preventing the water to go back into this system, because I don't want to get a mix of oil and water. Otherwise I'd have to filter it, and that would be annoying. I just want to have pure oil come out of the rocket and go into that liquid reservoir and ultimately the oil refinery to produce some petroleum. And now that the rocket is down there, I'm going to connect the line to get oil to my world. I'm just disabling the liquid reservoir that's going to contain the ethanol and making sure the battery's not connected to the aqua tuner, but just making sure that doesn't operate. I do not want it to operate at this time, as there's not enough water to keep it cool. Alright, I got a printing gift of a sweater, so a snazzy sweater, so I'm going to give that out to one of my dupes. I've got a bit of polluted oxygen in this column going up through my base, so I ultimately want to put steam turbines here, and I can't have that ladder where it is, so I have to move the ladder over to the right, so I'll have to build these tiles in such a way that I can get back up, maintaining this vacuum. Telling my dupes to load some lead and iron, but only the lead and iron that's swept, and I'm going into the rocket and specifically tell them to only unload that. Also have to open the door so they'll be able to have access. It is now time to throw a switch and let some oil go into my homeworld for processing. Here I'm just watching oil go down to my system. It's going through that column, so it's not sending heat out into my base, which is quite nice because it's in almost a vacuum area there, and the bottom area actually is vacuum. That is hitting the oil refinery, and one of the dupes has to go attend to that, and then we're going to watch the petroleum go to the polypress, which will eventually give us some plastic. Configuring the temperature gauge to operate at 55 degrees or less. One of the outputs of the oil refinery is natural gas, and there's no way to catch that other than just pump it somewhere in your base. So I've got a system here for capturing carbon dioxide and chlorine. I'm going to add an additional one, a gas reservoir that's going to be designed to capture the natural gas that I'll get out of this system. Here I'm continuing the process of moving the ladder to the right, so ultimately I'll be able to destroy the ladder that's currently there, and so that I can build a steam turbine. I'm getting a lot of gases, natural gas and carbon dioxide, chlorine around my industrial area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the pump that collects carbon dioxide, chlorine, natural gas, all that stuff further down. And it'll work with the same logic, basically saying if you don't detect oxygen for a certain amount of time, pump it up and do some basic filtering. Now that I've got lead, I'm going to use it here. So I'm just going to wrap a radiant pipe back and forth, and this is going to be filled with super cold ethanol to freeze this block for my deep freeze. Just watching the pump turn on down here. This is getting rid of the carbon dioxide and some of the other gases, and I've got it setting there for natural gas on the final one, so that's collecting that. Now I do have an excess amount of carbon dioxide. I could either vent the excess in space, which I may do soon, but just before I do that, I'm going to get one additional tank of carbon dioxide before I do that. Just make it easy for those gases in the industrial zone here to fall down and go towards that pump. Big moment here, because the polypress has produced enough plastic, I'm able to build a steam turbine. I've got the first one, and the second one is just about to be completed. So that's going to allow me to operate the polypress and metal refinery without worrying so much about heat. It's also going to allow me to have the deep freeze system operate. Okay, so a lot happened in this episode, but the core thing for me is I was able to get oil from the Dessel lens to my homeworld, and I was able to do that in such a way that the pilot didn't pass out while they were traveling home due to overheating from that hot oil. That oil, once it reached the homeworld, I was able to send it through an oil refinery into polypress to produce some plastic. And that allowed me to build 2 steam turbines. I've got a bunch of systems underneath that that'll get operational, I expect, in the next episode, one of which is going to be a deep freeze that will have an infinite amount of food that'll last forever. And I'm also going to handle almost all of the heat that comes from the metal refinery and the polypress. So if you want to see that, like this video, subscribe, and see you in the next episode.